Instruction skill 1 is make an appropriate estimate. And this is page 14 of the textbook. The computation that goes along with this is on page 142. If you haven't already done that, I would stop and try that before watching this video. I want to start in the left margin. I would encourage you not to skip the reading. I know this is math, but this is the important things about the skill that you really need to know. So I definitely would not recommend skipping the reading. Don't just jump to page 15 to the practice problems. Take the time to understand this first. So let's start with this chart that's talking about rounding to different places. And the number they're giving us to consider is this one. You'll notice that this one is the same all through the chart. The number is 16,249. And in this first example, they give me a number line that is marked in tens. It's actually marked in fives, but they want us to consider rounding to the nearest 10. So for example, the number 16,249 rounded to the nearest 10 is closest to 16,250. And before I show you actually how I think about rounding, let's look at what it means to round to the tens place. So we have two numbers here that are relative tens. We have 16,240 and 16,250. And then of course that midpoint, and with rounding you always need to consider the midpoint is right there. And I have no idea what is happening. Oh, I do, sorry. I had the wrong pen. And now I have the wrong color. So the 16,245 is the midpoint between those two tens. And 16,249 is almost all the way over to this number rounded to tens. So here's how I think about this one. I take my number, 16,249, and I underline the tens place because that's what they want me to consider. And I look to the neighbor on the right, and I follow the rounding rule. And the rounding rule to me looks like this. I imagine a hill, and at the top of the hill is the number 5. 6, 7, 8, and 9 are on the round up side of the hill. So if the neighbor in my example is one of these numbers, I'm going to round up. If the neighbor happens to be a 4, a 3, a 2, a 1, or a 0, some teachers call this rounding down. I don't like that because it always made me want to go a number lower. So I would say if the neighbor is in this range, we are going to stay. We're going to hold the place or stay the same. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I want to make my pen size just a little bit smaller. That writing's hard to read. So in my example down here, of 16,249. I have underlined the tens place. And remember, everything is writing on the neighbor. It's what the neighbor says to do. So I look at this 9, and I can tell you that that's on the upper end of that curve. That is a roundup if the neighbor is in that range. So this tells me, looking at the neighbor, that I need to round up. And when I do that, that means that that 4 becomes a 5 to get 16,250. So you can see that that actually is what the number rounds to. It's closer to 50 than to 40. So let's apply the same rule. This time we're going to round to the hundreds place. So I would take the 16,249, and this time I'm underlining the hundreds place. And I look next door, apply the rounding rule. This time the neighbor is in that range of staying the same. So the 2 doesn't change. It's going to stay the same. 16,249 is closer, not a lot closer, but it's a little bit closer to this side of the number line because it's just a hair under that midpoint. Then if we want to round to the thousands place, so I take my number, 16,249, and I underline the thousands place. I look at the neighbor and apply the rounding rule. The neighbor is in that low end of the curve, so it's going to stay the same. So my 6 is not going to change. It will be closer to 16,000 than to 17,000. And you can actually see that on the number line. Because if you look at this number, the 249 is much closer to this side than it would be to this side. Because that halfway point, which is always important if we're rounding, is 16,500. And the number we're looking at is below 16,500. This is not the easiest thing in the world to understand, in my opinion. So if you have questions about this, please ask your teacher to go over it with you and give you more practice. And then we're going to practice as well. But this is something that is really quite important to understand. All of these skills are. Okay, let's talk about estimating. A lot of teachers use the term round and estimate synonymously, meaning that they use them interchangeably or that they mean the same thing. To me, they are not the same thing. To me, I use rounding to estimate. I have to round numbers to get an estimate. So rounding is the way that I estimate. And an estimate is actually a rounded answer. So a couple of terms that you need to know are overestimate and underestimate. So let's look at overestimate first. And there are times that you would want to overestimate. And we'll talk about those. Overestimate means to estimate an amount greater than an actual value. For example, overestimating the total cost of a purchase to make sure that you will take enough money. So let's suppose that I'm going to the grocery store and I need to buy 3 items. My bread is usually about $3.29. So I would round that up to 4 just to be sure that I have enough to include tax. Maybe the bread's gone up a few cents. So if I round up to $4, I know that I will have enough money. That's an overestimate. An underestimate is to estimate an amount less than the actual value. For example, underestimating the amount of gas in your car's tank to make sure you can reach your destination. I would never ever want to overestimate how much gas is in my tank because that means I'm likely to run out. In this case, I would much rather underestimate to know that I have enough gas to get where I'm going. So these two concepts evidently are going to be part of our lesson. They're important, so we needed to take note of those. So let's look at an example of an actual test question. Karen is planning to buy a used car that is on sale for $16,249. The dealer is offering 0% financing for a 4-year loan. The salesperson tells Karen that with a down payment of $1,000, her loan payment will be about $194 per month for 4 years. Use your own estimate to decide which phrase best describes the salesperson's estimate of Karen's monthly payment. And our choices are very close to the actual value, unreasonably high, unreasonably low, exactly correct, or not enough information is given. And they've already given me the answer here. They say that the answer is 3. It is unreasonably low. So let's see how we can confirm that answer to be true. And let me just take a look to see. Okay, I'm just going to keep reading. About estimation. To estimate means to find an approximate answer. One way to estimate is to use rounded numbers that make computations easier. Numbers can be rounded to different place values. 16,249 rounds to 16,250 if you're rounding to tens. If you're rounding to hundreds, you get 16,200. And if you're rounding to 1,000, you get 16,000. 194 rounds to $190 if you're looking at the tens place. $200 if you're looking at the hundreds place, and 0 thousands because it's not that big. You can't round up to 1,000 from a number that is just around 200. It would round to 0 instead of 1,000. And then 48 rounds to 50, but it would not round to 100 or to 1,000. It's just not big enough to do that. So our solution for this word problem about Karen's car is as follows. The first thing we want to do is estimate the amount Karen will owe after making the down payment. The car price is about $16,000. And let me show you something right here. We need to look at these two symbols. You know this one, the equal sign. But let's look at this squiggly equals. So equals means exactly the same. Equals is reserved for two quantities that are the same. Not about the same, but are the same. If you see this wavy equal sign, it means approximately. It means that rounding has occurred or that estimation has occurred, approximately the same. Okay. So what they've done here, they have taken the 16,249 and they've rounded that to the nearest thousand. So when I look at this, I look at the neighbor says stay. So this is approximately $16,000. And you might be wondering why I went to the thousands place. And the reason is because my down payment is $1,000. So that $1,000 matches the thousands place or the thousands estimate right here. So what I would do is take the $16,000 estimate minus the down payment, and this is what they've done here. This is the estimated cost of the car minus $1,000 down, and this is the approximate amount to finance or to break into payments. So that is step one. We have to figure out how much money we're dealing with respect to financing. And we're looking at about $15,000. Step two is to estimate the number of payments Karen will make in 4 years. Well, I know that there are 12 months in every year. So we have done 12 times 4 is 48. That is an exact answer. This is the number of months in a year. And this is the number of years in the deal. And that is exactly 48. But 48 is a hard number to divide. So they have gone ahead and taken it a step further to say that 48 months is about 50 months. This is the approximate payment period. Now that's an overestimate, but it still will make the division a little bit easier for me. And let me show you, again, I'm assuming you have watched the computation on page 142. If not, you need to. But here's a short way to do division. You take that approximate 15,000 and you take the approximate 50 months. And the first thing I would want to do is to get rid of zeros. So I'm going to take one off the top and one off the bottom, and I'll cancel those. And then I'm going to bring over these two. Let me get a color change going here. I'm going to bring these two zeros over. We can't cancel them, so they have to come over. And again, that would be these two, same two zeros. And then 5 goes into 15 3 times. So that would be an answer, a quotient of 300. And that's what they've done down here. I should have done this a little bit lower down, but I wanted to use my arrows. So here's what they've done. So my estimate is $300 a month. The salesperson told her that she would only have to pay $195 a month, or $194, wasn't it? About $194, so they've rounded that to $195. That is way too low. A reasonable estimate is $300 per month. So they have underestimated the amount Karen would have to pay. So I hope Karen did not take that deal without knowing the math herself. This is why it pays to know your math. Going to buy a car, you need to know how to do the math, because they will take advantage of you if you don't know how to do the math. Percentages are incredibly important. Okay, so let's take a look at page 15 and practice some of the skills we've learned here. All right, so this is readiness for the GED test, and they give us different kinds of questions. The first two are called concept questions, where they're just testing my ability to understand the rounding rule. Procedure tests my ability to set up and solve a problem. And then application tests my ability to apply my skills to real life. And the test could opt to ask you any of these. So you need to know how to do each one of them and what each one of them means. So rather than draw this again, I am going to try my best to copy, my rounding rule. If not, I will just, let's see if this works. I will draw it again if it doesn't, because this is the concept. To understand a concept, I like to see a diagram, and this is a good one. So let's do these two concept questions using the rounding rule. There were 4,289 fans at today's basketball game. Round 4,289 to the nearest 100. So 4,289 to the nearest 100. So I underline the hundreds place. I look at the neighbor and I see that the neighbor is in the roundup section. So I'm going to bring this up to 4,300. And that is my rounded estimate. That is going to go with answer number 3. I do not like these multiple choices where they are labeled with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I prefer A, B, C, D, E. But I can't do anything about that. So let's call that answer number 3. This is only testing my ability to apply the rounding rule. This is the easiest. I'm not saying these are easy, but this is the easiest type of question that you will see about rounding. The price of a new television set has been reduced to $324.99. Round $324.99 to the nearest $10. So I have $324.99. We want to round to the tens place. Now be careful. There is a difference between 10, that's this place, and 10th, that is this place. We want the 10 place. So I underline the 2. I look at the neighbor. The neighbor says stay, so the 2 stays the same. $320. Remember, the rounded, the numbers that are after the underlined place get rounded off. So I like option 2 on this one, $320. Again, conceptual skills are just the basic things. All right, procedural skills. These, for me personally, were the hardest because I liked the story problems where they're actually telling me a story, and those are the applications. So I like those. Procedure for me personally were the toughest, but they may not be for you. Number 3, for her clothes shop, Caitlin ordered 19 display stands. So So I'm going to say 19 stands. That is about 20, just using some mental math. Each stand costs $213.50. And I'm going to say that that is about $200. Now you could say it's about $210 or about $214. But remember, I'm looking for the easiest math I can get by with. And you notice this problem is not a calculator problem. So it's not like I can pick up my calculator and whiz through the actual math. I need it to be as simple as I can make it. What is the best estimate of the total cost of the display stands? So I would need to say 200 times 20. And I'm going to show you the shortcut here. I'm going to take that 0, this 0, and this 0 and bring them over. So I have 1, 2, 3 of them. And again, I am bringing them over. And then I will say 2 times 2 is 4. So I really like this estimate because I see it in my choices. Number 5 is the best estimate for this problem, about $4,000. Now, since I have rounded down on my dollar amount and up on my stands, this is going to be pretty close. It shouldn't be too much of an over or under estimate. I'm thinking about $4,200. So this is a good estimate. It's a tight estimate. It's close to the actual amount. All right. Jamie will make 48 equal payments. So I can already tell you that that's about 50. To pay off a no interest loan of $2,464.75. And so I'm going to say that is about $2,500. So I'm rounding this one to the hundreds place. And you might be wondering why I didn't go to call it 2,000. I could have. That would have been okay. But I know that these two numbers play well together. A 5 and a 25 are in the same family. I like that. What is the best estimate of the amount of each payment? All right, I want to highlight this word each because that means divide. So I will take my 2,500. I'm using mental math, no calculator here. And 50, we're dividing that. So I will cancel the zeros that I can. I have no idea why it reversed the line. And then I'm going to use that mental math strategy that I've shown you. I want to bring over the 0. We can't just forget about it, so bring it over here. And then 5 into 25 is 5 times. And that's not an approximation. That's an actual answer. So I like number 2 for this one. The payments are about $50 per month. Again, those are testing procedure. You have to know how to do the concept to get the estimates. But these take it a step further. And then these will take it to the max. If you can do these application problems, you can do the other two types of problems. But notice number 5 says that I can use a calculator, which is kind of helpful. That's a good thing. All right, it says to estimate the average number of sandwich sales per day for the days shown in the table. Well, the first thing that I want you to notice are these keywords, average and per, because both of those are giving me clues that we need to divide. But average also needs me to be able to find a mean, an average number. So the first thing I'm going to do is to round my sales data. Now, when I look down this list of data, I see that they're all three-digit numbers. So that's hundreds. And that's how I'm going to round. Because my sales are in hundreds, that's the most logical place to round. I could round to tens, but I think that would be a waste of my time. So I'm going to say that 619 is closer to 600 than to 700. 521 is closer to 500 than 600. 622 is closer to 600 than 700. 549 by just a hair is closer to 500 than 600. And 704 is closer to 700 than 800. 683 is closer to 700 than 600. So once I get those estimates, actually I've rounded the numbers, I'm going to estimate the sum. I'm going to add up all those numbers to get a total. And when I do that, and you can use your calculator here, I'm just adding these digits. So let me walk you through that. 6 and 5 make 11. 11 and 6 make 17. Plus 5 more is 22. 29, 36. So I have just added up those digits to get 3,600. Now, to find the average is a two-step process. There were 3,600 sandwiches sold approximately, and then I need to turn around and figure out how many days. So we did not sell on Sunday, that is just 6 days. I cannot cancel any zeros here because there are none on the bottom. So I'll bring the 2 over, and then I will say 6 into 36 is 6 times. So my average was about, and that's important, it wasn't exactly, it was about 600 sandwiches per day. So I am liking answer number 4 here. Again, this is applying the concept and the procedure into a more complex problem. All right, number 6. Miguel is planning to buy a new stereo. The stereo costs $539 and is offered with 0% financing for a 2-year loan. After making a down payment of $50, Miguel estimates his monthly payment to be about $20. Which phrase best describes Miguel's estimate? Very close to the actual amount, much higher than the actual amount, much lower than the actual amount, exactly the correct amount, not enough information is given. Well, this problem to me has a little bit of a twist. They are not asking me to estimate. Miguel has already done that. He estimates his monthly payment to be about $20. If you notice, the choices here are all asking about actual amount. So that's what you and I need to do. We need to find the actual true amount of Miguel's payments. And I'm going to change my pen color here just so we don't get mixed up with this other problem. The stereo costs $539, and Miguel is putting $50 down. Okay, and let me just highlight that for you. There's the cost. Here is the down payment. Okay. So let's go ahead and find the price that Miguel will have to pay. I'm sorry. We know the cost. We know the price he has to pay. We want to know the amount he wants to finance. You can use your calculators if you want. That would be 9. And then here I would have 13 take away 5 is 8. And 489 is the amount to finance. Now we know that there's 0% interest. That's good to know. But we need to take a look right here at the 2-year loan, because he's making monthly payments, not yearly payments. So I know that 2 years in terms of months this is not an estimate, it's 24 months. So I need to divide 489 by 24. And you can use your calculator. You don't have to do that longhand. 489 divided by 24. And just as I say that, I am going to have to do it longhand. I don't have, oh wait, I have my cell phone. Let me do that calculator. I did not grab my Casio. I will before I go much further, because if they'll allow me to use it, I'm going to use it. And I got $20, 0.375. So his actual payment would be $20.38. Okay, Miguel estimated $20. So Miguel was close. It was not exactly the correct amount, so we can eliminate option 4. Not enough information is given. I can eliminate that one because it was given. Much higher than the actual amount, that is not true. Much lower than the actual amount, that is not true. Miguel's estimate was very close to the real payment. Miguel knew what he was doing when he estimated. All right, finally here. Letitia's car gets 42 miles per gallon. Approximately how far can Letitia drive on a full tank of 19.5 gallons? So they have given me exact numbers. They threw in the word approximately. So that tells me that I can round to get an approximation. I like that because that means I don't have to do long calculations, Notice the calculator icon is gone here. So on the GED test, you would not have a calculator. All right, so 42 miles, that is awfully close to 40. 19.5 gallons is awfully close to 20. Now be careful here. 42 miles, I was wrong here. I should have said miles per gallon. It's not 42 miles that she drove. It's 42 miles for every gallon of gas. And this is 20 gallons. Okay. So we have to decide, do we divide or do we multiply? And if you're not sure, I'm going to show you how to do this with a proportion. But if you're not sure, one thing you can do is look at your answers. To get from 40s and 20s up to these numbers, that would be multiplying. I have to build up to those numbers. However, here's the proportion way. Set up a ratio of miles per gallon. We know that she can travel 40 miles on 1 gallon. And we know that she has about 20 gallons in her car. So you would multiply 40 and 20. Use that shortcut, you know. You've got 2 zeros. And 4 times 2 is 8. 800 divided by 1 is 800. So I'm going to guess between 750 and 850. My estimate's pretty tight because I didn't do any crazy rounding. It was already pretty close. So she can go about 800 miles on those 20 gallons. All right, hopefully these questions make sense. They are not easy questions. Nothing in this book is easy. But if you miss this on the pretest, this is a good review of the skill, making an appropriate estimate.